welcome. Great to have you here for our School Design for Learner-Centered Practices conversation. We're so excited that you can join us. This type of design that we're talking about is something that everybody has skill in that we can all approach, and we're going to be framing this up with our panelists here in just a moment. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that this conversation is for you, and so you bring your expertise to this, and we want you to be able to jump in at any point, ask questions, push a bit farther if you want more depth on something. Make sure this has value to you. So we're going to kick it off by turning over to our panelists. And if you can go ahead, team, introduce yourselves.
Okay, so hello everybody. I am Bryanna Norton. I am the proud now Panther principal. We'll get to that. We changed our mascot this year at Hidden Valley Middle School. We're located about 30 miles north of San Diego. Again, I'm at a middle school, grades 6 through 8. We have approximately 800 students. We are a Title I school. 40% of our students are multilingual learners, 100% on free and reduced lunch, and about 18% of our kiddos receive special education services. I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
Hi, I'm Gina Matthew. I am a first grade teacher, and our school is North Broadway Elementary School, and also from Escondido, California, 30 miles north of San Diego as well.
Same district as Bryanna. My name is Katie Taylor. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit, but I teach third grade here at North Broadway School. And we have about 500 TK through fifth grade students. And we are not Title I.
All right.
Glad
Thanks
to be
for being here. And Katie, yes, third grade and lost voices kind of comes with the territory. But again, thank you. So in my role as a Director of Strategic Partnerships, I have been fortunate enough to work with Escondido Unified School District in several different ways, both redesign, but we have a redesign umbrella that we would say that there's several ways that you can engage in this work. I've worked with Bryanna in a micro school, and so there's a school within a school redesign, and we'll dig into all of that. And I am also working with another cohort that's looking at whole school redesign, which is what Gina and Katie engaged in. Obviously, redesign, again, can mean something very different district to district. It can also involve just starting a new space or a standalone small space, but we're going to look at all those different approaches in our conversation today. So to frame our conversation, I wanted to point us to Learner-Centered Collaborative's vision. And it's a great way of framing this because we envision education ecosystems where all learners know who they are, thrive in community, and actively engage in the world as their best selves. And when we talk about ecosystems, at Learner-Centered Collaborative, this is the ecosystem that we have in mind. One where, of course, learners are at the center, and we've been very clear about what is their whole learner outcomes. They've been defined often through a profile of a graduate or a portrait of a learner. And in this case, at Escondido, that work has been done, and that everybody in the district is aware of what those targets are. They also have a learning model in place. So this is the type of instruction that will lead to those outcomes that we're hoping for all of our learners. So after that step, a crucial piece is looking at the school design elements that can turbocharge that work, that can put you in the right spot to be able to see, that learning model thrive and those learning outcomes rise to the surface. And so we're going to be digging in on that here with our panelists. At Learner-Centered Collaborative, through our work with districts and schools and state departments of education all over the country, we've identified 6 learning design elements that seem to have a lot of impact. And obviously there's others that you can draw from, but we think that you get quite a bit of impact when you're looking at spaces that have small learning communities, real world learning, right? Performance assessment that involves the whole learner and whole learner outcomes, distributed leadership, teacher collaboration, and a clear identity for both learners and educators and all involved in the community. So these are going to be key drivers of our conversation today, and we'll look at how they show up in the work that was done with these groups. And so to do this, so I just want to kick us off. Why redesign? Why engage in this work? And to get us started with this, I have a quote I want us to consider, right? From W. Edwards Deming: every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. Meaning, if we weren't seeing the results that you wanted from your learners, it has to do with the design of the system you're engaged in. And if we want to see different results, we're going to need to shift that system. We're going to shift those design elements to get the newly defined whole learner outcomes that you've landed on. And so we're going to talk about how did your schools decide that the time was right to make this shift? And so to kick that off, I'm going to hand it over to Bryanna, and why don't you share a bit about how you knew you were ready and what were the conditions?
So I love this question because Gina and Katie are probably going to have a completely different experience of why they did it. But for us at Hidden Valley, I actually got hired in 2022, and I essentially had the opportunity to work with the school that some would kind of identify as a turnaround school. And so when I went into the site, I took a lot of time to listen to our staff and really hear where they were at, what their concerns were, and where they wanted to go as a school. And what came through really apparently was my teachers had really big hearts, but they were disenfranchised. And our students did not have structure, process, procedures. Our kiddos were disenfranchised as well. So this really led us down the opportunity. LCC had come in and EUSD had started the learner profile and the learning model. It had already been started when I came in. And I had done some of this work already in a previous district circa 10 years ago, which was awesome at the high school level. And so I kind of had this understanding of what that learning model, what that is and what the profile is and how they work together. And so my teachers wanted to be kind of that shining star at the middle school level. That's what came through. They were known for that years ago and they wanted to return to that. And so it really provided an easy opportunity for us to start doing this work and to move towards really putting our students at the center of learning. And I can kind of dive in after I let Gina and Katie kind of talk about their journey a little bit, just of like what we did over the last 2.5 years. But what about you guys, Gina, Katie?
So we started noticing that our upper grade students, our ending the third grade, our fourth and fifth graders were starting to leave our school. And we're wondering like, why? Why are they going to charter schools, private schools, magnet schools after third grade? And so we started asking our students and asking our parents, like, why are you guys leaving? And what would you want different? And that's what started our conversations. And our teachers, we had those conversations with the families and the students, and we're ready to make a change to try and figure out why we want to keep our families here. We want to keep our students here. So we knew we were ready. We had a very strong collaborations among our staff. So we don't have very much movement among our staff. So the collaboration was so strong, and our district said, your collaboration and your staff is so strong. We think you guys are ready for a redesign. So our principal said, you know what, let's go our next step. Katie, you want to add on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our teachers had been doing like the same thing for 20 years. People were just kind of in that funk where nothing was changing, test scores weren't growing. We noticed that there were more behavior students, especially in the upper grades, but also in the lower grades, were eloping more and just having these extreme behaviors. But then we were also thinking about some of the things that we have going on that we would want to, highlight and benefit, so we thought, hey, we've got a lot of good things and a lot of things we need to work on. So we felt like we were ready to jump in.
Love it. I have a couple of follow-up questions before we dig into the details. One is, it sounds like what I'm hearing from both of you is just an ability to notice, to look deeply in your systems, right? And Bryanna, you're naming that your students and your teachers were seeking something more, but they felt to use the term disenfranchised. And I want to follow up on that in terms of what that might mean in your district, because there's a lot of different contexts and terms for that. And also for Gina and Katie, to say that, again, we're going to dig deeper, it's like some empathy work, and we're going to sit down and talk to these families. Why are you leaving? What are you doing here? And just that willingness to uncover. And that is often something that we do when we use our redesign process, is just starting with empathy and digging a bit deeper, really working with those closest to the challenge or the opportunity. Do you mind tackling that real quick, Bryanna? What did you mean when you said that they were disenfranchised? What were they lacking?
So a lot of our teachers, this is a very candid conversation. And sometimes I feel like people don't really talk about what their environments were like before the change. And I came to a school where there were basically no rules. no process, no structure, no procedures that were in place at that time. My teachers essentially were just in their classroom, not collaborating, not working with one another. They kept their doors closed, they did their job, and they left. So I always call it like they were there to do their 8, hit the gate. They wouldn't come outside. They were not engaging with the kids. The kids were not engaging with the adults. When I came on campus the first year, the kids wouldn't even look at the adults. They wouldn't say even hello. So we really had to start at the basics of taking care of our kiddos' social emotional needs. So there's always this phrase where it's like, we can't bloom until we Maslow. And so for the first like year and a half, there was a hyper focus on really gaining insight from our students through forums and talking to the staff about what their needs are, what was school like, what did they like about school, what did they not like about school, how can we improve it? And so we really went on this intentional journey of building community and coming together as a school. And as the site leader, I said yes to everything. So the first year, my staff wanted web. They wanted a leadership program on our campus. I said yes. We sent teachers to get trained in that. And I would say now in these 2.5 years, alongside all the other work that we're doing through the learning model and profile, like having that leadership and having our kids, again, student agency, voice and choice, coming to the center and leading things on our campus has been huge. And so it was not a fun place to be. I have to be really honest with you. When I first came in, I was like, uh-oh, like we really had some significant needs that we needed to address, not just with our students, but with our teachers as well. So
What I'm hearing there is, along with empathy in both spaces, also starting with vulnerability, right? Like that willingness to say, this is what's a challenge. There obviously are, Gina and Katie, you mentioned long-standing teachers that have, a tight community, they've been there for a long time, but not just to settle there and say, all right, we can be vulnerable, we could be better, we could serve our students better, and to look in and be honest about that sounds like a real powerful first step. Gina and Katie, do you mind paint a picture for us, help us understand what does redesign mean? What have you done in terms of, give us some of the wide strokes painting of a picture of what looked like, what was happening before redesign, what redesign is, where you are now. Can you help us understand that?
So how it started was, our principal brought it and we developed a team. So she asked individual teacher, well, she put it out there like, volunteers. And she goes, who'd like to be on this team or the redesign team? And so some of us got together and she had a vision of what she thought our redesign would be. And after we got together, it's a process. It was a very long process and many hours, and it doesn't happen overnight. And it started with chart papers and lots of chart papers. And it was a meeting with parents, and they charted what they wanted to see. Then it was a meeting with staff. What did they want? And all staff, not just teachers, all staff on campus. Then it was with students. What do you guys want to see? And then we started seeing chart papers up. We started seeing the connections, like finding what you liked, what you didn't, not necessarily
just what you liked
at first, and change you'd liked and see. And then we started making the connections and what we had that we could offer already. It's, on our campus, what was feasible, right? That wasn't going to cost millions of dollars. And what are the easy changes first?
Right.
And, we just started making these little steps in our redesign meetings and, and I remember clearly the day that it clicked, and I was driving home, and I remember calling Katie on the phone, and I go, oh my gosh, I think we got it. Like we did it. Like it was after so many meetings and so many hours. And it was like such a lot of analyzing, and like we have pictures of our chart papers still, but it was it was not overnight, I'll tell you that, but the feeling that you get when it finally clicked and then you start seeing it come to life is incredible.
Yeah. Gina and Katie, did you just have open forums for like that dialogue? Did you guys do those in staff meetings, or
And with
did
our
you do like a
staff.
redesign team, all of the above? Like, how did you guys do it?
Yeah, so we did have our redesign team that started. It was small. It grew within the first few months, a little bigger. And we took it at like our staff meeting. We had all these chart papers. What do you like that we have here? You know, what do you wish we had? All of the things. And everybody just filled out all the chart papers. We did the same things with parents and also with students. We interviewed students. We would bring groups in to do it, and they loved that. What we started noticing is that we always had what we called the secret garden here on campus. And it was always like this garden that classrooms could go out and I've worked here 27 years. And so I've seen the garden when it's at its best and when it's at its lowest, and different parent groups helped us out through the years. We also had a science lab that was really important on our campus. And so those two things in all of the interviews and all of the questionings and all the empathy we did, those two things kept coming up. Like our students love going to the science lab, or my student comes home from school and tells me all about what they did in the garden. So those were two big things that we noticed, as well as like they wanted hands-on learning. Everybody wanted to do more like voice and choice. So we had little bits of that before, but that's what kind of, you know, when we synthesized all the information and all of the millions of ideas and charts, there were a few things that just like kept popping out.
And then as a team, we went to visit many schools, and then we would bring back everything we would see at other schools, and could it work at North Broadway? And how can we make it work at North Broadway? And
Yeah.
so you
We also had our ideas at the design team, but we wanted to see if that was just us or if that's really what the staff would like.
Right.
If we showed them the same schools, would they have the same feelings? And so we showed them some of the things, the videos, pictures from all the schools that we visited or read about or watched you know, videos on or Zoomed with, and they all had the same as us. So we knew we were on the right track and that we would have their backing.
Love it. So obviously we're going to get to you painting this full picture of kind of the ranch, what that garden became, and how it's central to your identity, which I think is such an amazing story. Before we do though, I want to call out this asset-based approach that you took, right? Often when we use this term redesign, there can be a reaction to that. Well, what's wrong? What are we doing wrong? Why do we need to redesign? Can't we just, keep going down this particular path or add something? But redesign can have that connotation. But it sounds like your team really said, what are our strengths, right? As we would want to do with our learners, right? And looking at them and helping them grow into the strengths and use those superpowers and their strengths, those assets, to be the basis for their growth and excitement around their own learning. It sounds like you did that both as a design team, but also importantly, you were reaching out to community members, to parents, to students, and getting other people's input on that and arriving at some of those key overlapping insights. I'm going to keep a little bit of a cliffhanger here. We're going to hear about the ranch, but I want to get us up to speed with Bryanna. Tell us a little bit about your redesign process, both before micro school and then obviously the work we've been doing in micro school.
Yeah, so micro school was a pretty awesome opportunity. We were actually approached less than a year ago. I want to say February, March, and we had an opportunity to really create a micro school. So again, a school within a school, or I love to call it like an innovation lab. And just based on the work we had already started to do at our campus, we had implemented the first wellness center in EUSD for our middle schoolers. We had already started doing web and leadership things. We started a new elective, which was culinary, that really took off, that our kids were interested in. So we were starting to move towards doing things differently than how they had been done. And we were approached to do a micro school, and I sent an email out to the staff just saying, who wants to volunteer for this? And I had plenty of teachers that were like, yes, we're on board. So we focused on our 7th graders. So 50% of our 7th graders currently, we started this year, our team of teachers got this micro school essentially up and running with the help of Jesse, and kind of coming along as a thought partner, working with our team as well, and really focusing on project-based learning. We're looking at those student portfolios We also are looking at competency-based grading. Our district had started those competencies, and that was really grounded in that learner profile. But and they had done that for like first grade, fifth, and eighth. But we, myself and some of our support and admin team, we vetted out a rubric that went further, specifically for each grade level of our kids. So our team is now starting to implement that. One of the things in micro school that the team does, we have an advisory period at the beginning of the day. And I had written the course description for what's called a wellness course that bookends at the end of the day. So we have the same set of teachers that work together in a team. Some people have called them villages. This was really important to our staff because they had done this many, many moons ago, and they found value in that. And so our students in their advisory do social emotional learning. We do a lot of community circles, but our kiddos also in the micro school are focused on creating goals. And then also at the end of the day, they work with that same teacher on their goals, whether it's an academic goal, behavior goal, and then our kiddos are also working on student portfolios, demonstrations of their work that they've currently done at the end of the day. And we're rolling that, we're on a trimester system. So we're looking at building out that wellness course into more of college and career. Our micro school has started doing strengths-based through the Myers-Briggs for our kiddos. So they've all taken that survey and starting this conversation around college and career. Because one of our goals is to create an innovation lab of like college and career and have our kids experience those things as well. So a lot going on within that micro school. And I like to always describe our micro school as kind of 2-3 steps ahead, while the rest of our school is coming alongside doing the same type of work. So meanwhile, while I have the micro school working, every single grade level and content area is also doing release days. And they're working through, and actually I have a team right now, my 6th grade ELA team is working all day today, and they're focused on project-based learning. So I take them through like a mini PD over an hour and a half of like PBL versus projects. And then they work with AI, they work with their essential standards, and they're developing PBL. So next year, our entire school will have 3 units of PBL across every content area. So you're kind of building this while the micro school is piloting. And what's great, Jesse, about the micro school is they can say, hey, this worked really well. This totally sucked and bombed. Like, we shouldn't do that. And it's great because they share out at the staff meeting. And so it's very transparent of where they're at, what they're doing, but what's going well and what the struggles are. So when the rest of the school does that, they can kind of avoid some of those difficulties.
Great. So let's take a moment here and just make sure we get everybody up to speed. Because again, micro school can mean a lot of different things. PBL, you're referring to a project-based learning there, right? So for you, this micro school is a space where you said you could call it an incubation lab, an innovation lab. It is a portion of your current student body and current teaching staff that said, we're going to innovate. We're going to try a few of the new areas that you wanted to move into as a district, as a school. You said you want to get into portfolios. We want to start to get into competency-based assessment. And we're going to take it to the micro school, the innovation lab first. And they've said, hey, we're game for being the ones who try this, learn what works, learn what we need to completely rethink, and then what can we scale up from this into the school as a whole. And in a moment, we'll talk about why that might be beneficial versus a whole school redesign, kind of what works best when, and dig into that there. Just wanted to name, there was a question in there about visiting schools, and Bryanna, I know that you also did go and have some inspiration visits last year, and you're going to do it again this year, yes?
Yes, we are. And we're going to take our micro school team to go see some of these schools. And the previous district I'd worked in, we had done some of this work. So Vita is one of those wonderful places that a lot of people visit. And so I was pretty familiar with that type of school. But yes, we did tour. And I see Mark asked a question about defining what we mean by micro school. Hopefully Jesse was able to define that. If not, feel free to put it back in the chat. So we can kind of define it. It gets confusing sometimes with all the different ways that you can do redesign. But hopefully that answered the question.
So the question mark has there, how many students and how many teachers are in your micro school right now versus whole?
So right now we're in 7th grade only, and it is about 55 or 56% of our 7th grade team. So over 100 of our students are in the micro school, and there are our core content teachers. So we have math, science, English, history. They all work together as a team.
And so that's half of your 7th grade, and you're a 6th through 8th grade middle school.
Correct.
Yeah. And then turning back to Gina and Katie, can you describe for us a bit more about, you went through this redesign process this past year. Obviously, it's not an end to a process. It's an iteration. It's something you're currently still engaged in, but this identity of the ranch came out of it. Tell us about the ranch. Tell us about some of the shifts. What would we see that is new this year after this redesign process? What would some of the experiences be?
So we have a 5-year plan. So this year we implemented we called roundups. So once a month, we have each teacher has students that come. So we're TK through 5th grade. So every teacher and staff member, including librarians, principal, social worker, school psychologist, everybody, any staff member has a group of students that come to them for 1 hour of the first Thursday of the month. And so they have a group of students that come, they're TK through 5th grade that come to them, and they will go to them throughout their whole time at North Broadway. So if you have a TK this year, they'll come to them when they're in 1st grade, 2nd grade. So their whole time they'll go to the same staff member, and they do a type of SEL lesson with them for the first Thursday every month.
I'm going to join in a little bit
on the roundups for that. And then
let me just hold on for a second.
Okay.
It's kind of hard back and forth, but it's kind of like a mentorship program where we wanted, like, the reason we started this was after seeing some schools. I remember the first school we went to, it was just the 2 of us, and they had one of those mentor programs, and it was a high school. And I was like, that would be so awesome if we could do that with the littles at our school. And she was like, I don't know if we could do that, like mixing them all up, shipping them out. I'm like, well, let's just keep thinking on it. And the more we thought about it, we realized this could work. And so what it is like, you have that class of all the grades mixed up, and the teacher, that staff member, becomes one more person who speaks into their life and they're connected to. And so what she was saying is they will follow you. You will have the same roundup kids throughout their whole career at our elementary school. And we wanted to build not just staff student relationships, but also relationships cross grade level with kids who really don't see each other.
Yeah.
And so we started that, I think in the 4th week of school, and we've had maybe 5
yes.
roundups.
Yes.
And it's because we're rounding everybody up.
Yes.
And it's been really exciting to see, like, little 1st graders or little kindergartners see their buddy who's in their roundup across campus, and they'll
Their
run
5th grade.
over, get a hug.
Yes.
And so we're building that community there. And that was one thing.
That's one thing. One thing.
Out of many things
Yes.
we've started.
And then, so the other 3 Thursdays, we have what's called enrichment classes. So 1st grade, what they do is that they have 4 different enrichment classes, and they mix up the classes. So for example, right now in 1st grade, there is a science class, a literature art class, a music class, and a dinosaur, learning about dinosaurs. And the students get to pick their 1st and 2nd choice, and we mix them up. And for the 1st hour, for the last 3 Thursdays of the month, they get to mix up and they go off to those teachers' classes, and they get to do an exploration class with those teachers. And then for 5 weeks, and then they switch, and we switch the topic every 2 sessions. And then eventually what's going to happen is they're going to start intertwining between, so it'll be kinder and 1st. So we're just tiny steps trying to get those grade levels mixed up. So it'll be kinder 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 5th.
So,
right?
yeah, and with our big focus on environmental science and gardening and the ranch, that's how the ranch came to be.
Eventually we'll get there, but we're getting teachers used to the idea of doing it. So right now there's their choices, their choice. Eventually we're going to try and push, encourage them, encourage them to go more towards the ranch,
So
choices.
the goal would be like someone's learning about how to build, and maybe they're going to build planter boxes for the garden, or kids are learning about design or graphics or something like that. And they will eventually, our goal is every year to have one or more farmers markets where we're going to sell the things that we grow or create and explore classes. So our exploratory classes we call our ranch explore classes. So we
Yes.
have had now let's see, we had
That's our third
25
rotation, yes.
new classes, and now we have another 25, so almost 50 or more classes that students have been
Really cool.
in and involved in.
Yes.
And it's really changing. So Thursdays is our ranch day, and the kids come to school because it's the first hour, and they're just so excited about whatever it is that they are learning and exploring, or that, you know, that mentorship program that's built in there between the students. So it has really changed how our school is functioning right now, especially on Thursdays. And the excitement by not only the students, but the teachers and the staff members and even the parents, everybody is just like so excited, and nobody wants to miss school on Thursdays.
Yes. And so as the design team, like I said, we're going to eventually encourage. So as our staff, they're learning to do this. So right now we're just letting them pick whatever they
A
want.
topic that they're passionate
Yes, what
about.
about. So eventually we're going to encourage, like I said, more of a ranch type of classes, and then also start including our learning models and the profiles and all that stuff into that as well, to making sure that that is implemented into those classes. But baby steps, you know, we have to do little steps at a time in a redesign, so we don't want to overwhelm people. So that's another important thing in a redesign, that you can't go all in. Like,
even though sometimes it feels like you are.
yes.
And
And then what else have we done?
also,
Oh yeah, strategic teams. So we made strategic teams. So another thing that we did is that we've taken our staff and we've made different teams, six different teams. So one is curriculum. So they look at curriculum regarding gardening. Oh, yep. And
Which
we got hydroponics and
some
gardening curriculum. We have a gardening team that works on our garden. We've gotten a team that works with fundraising. So they contact people around our community to raise money.
or volunteer.
Or volunteers. What else do we have?
Yeah, there's a community
A
team
community team
that reaches out to our partners.
Yes, to our partners.
I can't remember if we got them all or not, but we wanted to raise new leaders, not just the design team.
Yes.
And so that was the goal of the strategic team. So other staff members are leading those, and not just the people who are on their design team, because we wanted to raise up more leaders and bring more staff members to this amazing process.
Yeah. So we are not allowed to.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. We're not allowed to be the leaders of those strategic teams.
We don't want to do that. Because you know how it is sometimes, because we know more and we designed it, they want us to do everything.
Yes.
So we were like, let's stop that right away and make sure that we're rising up new leaders here on campus.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to call back our design elements from the beginning there, and just naming, in your sharing this story here, one, the power of a clear identity, right, in your school, of becoming like, we're the ranch, right, and how that can lead to so many innovations that have a spot, they find a home in there. And so that is really, sounds like it's been really powerful. Certainly heard a lot around distributed leadership, as you're describing here, and distributed leadership, not just distributed amongst teaching teams, which you are saying we want to bring up other leaders, but also students, right? It sounds like you've got students have more voice and choice in this new system, and that's a huge part of it. And then obviously, so some small group learning you were naming there, and teacher collaboration, another big part. And so really fitting some of those elements of the model, which is great to seeing it come alive. There's a couple of questions that came up around impact, and I want to shift. I'm going to ask you both this, but I'm going to shift to Bryanna here. Now, I know that we just started the micro school, right? You spent
Yeah.
last year planning. We kicked it off, the planning team in February of last year, getting ready for launch in the fall. So we're pretty new into this process. I know that you're talking about shifting from just traditional assessment to also adding in some of the competency-based assessment. So that'll be a tool that you'll be able to look at growth as well, or impact. But anecdotally, or I know that you've maybe even seen beyond anecdotally, what has been the impact so far that you're aware of this shift to the micro school?
You know, when you talk to our micro school teachers, they will tell you like them as a team are so much more connected in the learning that's going on. And I think what they would also share with you and what I see is there is this responsiveness, right? A lot of times in education, we're reactionary to needs. And now we are much more proactive and responding in real time to what our kids are needing, whether academically or behaviorally. I think Sarah had asked a question, if they're feeling more connected and effective, I would say yes. And our data is starting to show us that across our school. We pulled our data probably 2 weeks ago. Compared even to last year, our out of school suspensions are down 60%. Our attendance was up 10% going into this year, and we're starting to see our test scores go up. We're looking at our iReady. So if any of you use that, and our iReady scores are pretty much going up across the board. So that's been really wonderful to see. And I would also say we intentionally picked 7th grade. Oftentimes in middle school, they're kind of like the middle child. I don't know if any of you guys are middle children. Sometimes they feel a little ignored. You're hyper focused on our youngins, the 6th grader, our 8th graders who are going into high school, and the older kids. And so it was a way to really focus and help support our 7th graders, who that year we have found is really difficult in middle school. And so those kiddos are feeling more apart. There's like this belonging across the board that we're seeing. And you have to remember, like, we've got that micro school going on, that learner profile. We've brought in culinary, we've brought in that wellness center, we've brought in web alongside our ASB program. But we've also brought in financial literacy, which was a big thing that our students were saying that they wanted. They want to learn about money, they want to know how to spend money. And so all of these things that are coming to fruition, and it's also based on, again, active listening to what our students are wanting and having student forums and gaining insight, giving the surveys to our parents, to our teachers, and things like that. So, yeah.
That's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing, and yeah, just encouraging results. Absolutely. So wonderful. I just wanted to name in here just a couple of specific questions that came up in there. I know that, right, Bryanna, the students were randomly assigned to the
They
micro school.
were. So I think there was a question that was up earlier that said, did the students opt in? And that was intentional. It was to be inclusive. So our micro school is inclusive of all of our students. We had a discussion around, should we make it opt-in or not? And we went with 50% of our kids will be in it, 50% of them will not. We didn't have any pushback. I didn't get one parent phone call upset about their kid being in the micro school. We did send out communication via our website and via email to our parents that we were doing a micro school and explaining what that was and what students would be involved in. But it is all of our kiddos.
Let's address something that I think has come up a lot when we talk about this is, in this micro school approach, you are, creating some innovative spaces and innovative experiences for a portion of your population. Did you get calls from parents saying, well, why can't my kid be in there? Or what is this, the storytelling, the messaging? And obviously you and I have talked about this a bit, but how are you sharing that around how the micro school will impact those who aren't in it right now?
Jesse, I'm trying to track your question. So,
Yeah.
so are you
I
asking
guess I
like the
asked two
people that
questions in
weren't?
one there. So no, one is, what do you say to parents who talk to you and say, hey, I would like, it sounds like great things are happening there. Why isn't my child in the micro school?
Yeah, and that's a First of all, we worked really hard in communication. Like anybody, I love Brene Brown, and she always says like clear is kind. And so we worked really diligently in trying to and being transparent of our micro school and the scaling up. But also that there are parts of the micro school that may be happening in your students' other classes. All of our students get advisory. So even if they don't have the wellness course at the end of the day, they still have advisory where they're doing some of that same work. A lot of our teachers will now be doing project-based learning at least once through our trimester 3. So I just say they may not be in it yet, but we're also looking at scaling that up in 8th grade where your kids will be able to experience that. So your 6th graders will now experience it next year in 7th, and our 7th graders will have it in 8th. And so that's the messaging that we provide.
And I'll call out to you that you mentioned earlier that sometimes in micro school you're discovering what does not work at all, right? And that those who are not in it, you get to the benefit of having the ideas and the approaches that have been tested and tuned and then scaled out. And so there's some benefit there for sure. Yeah.
And I think Mark had asked a question, do they still teach their individual subjects? Yes. So again, we're on a 7-period day. So our micro school, all of our kids start with an advisory period. Then all of my core content teachers teach their subject area, but their last period of the day, all of those teachers in micro school have wellness together. So, and they have their own wellness students, and their wellness students are their advisory kids. Because we've also kind of had this discussion around data. Sometimes it's hard for a lot of heavy learning to go on first thing in the morning and that last period of the day. So we hyper focus on those competencies, that social emotional, those soft skills for our kiddos.
And I just want to name, and they're having worked with your teaching group in the micro school, is that while they are teaching their core subjects, they are moving into integrating the content into projects that are sometimes will be projects for the whole micro school and sometimes projects that are interdisciplinary. So they are on that path. And this is something we can address here in just a moment, because I heard Gina and Katie talk about your 5-year plan. I know that Bryanna, we were working on the team of like a year by year, what are we going to implement kind of trimester by trimester, so that you're kicking off with the program you just described, and then there's some ambitious next steps coming forward. Yeah. I want to shift over to Gina and to Katie, and to ask you, what sort of impact have you seen, even anecdotally, since you've shifted to the ranch model?
Oh, well, first of all, sorry, the voice.
Oh, please.
All of our students are so excited about Ranch Day. You can feel just this culture shift that has happened where kids aren't coming like, with their hoods down, like trying to hide. They're excited. They can't wait. They come to our class for literally like a few minutes before we send them out. And the buzz on campus after the class, I have recess duty right after that. And they cannot stop talking about what they're learning and exploring in those classes, or what game they played on their roundup day. So that, for one, has changed dramatically, as well as just teachers being excited. At first, they might be like, oh, it's just like one more thing. But once they did it, they found how fun it was and how exciting it is to teach something and just for a few minutes and let the kids really just dive in and explore. Some of them are creating models, some of them are creating, different projects that they cannot wait to take home, but some of them we are trying to save for our farmers market. But just all of that just alone has really changed how it feels to be at the North Broadway Ranch from 2 years ago.
Yeah. And when we started this redesign, and I was happy to say that not one teacher opted to leave our school. So that was a big plus. Like nobody said, I want out. Everybody was on board, which was a good buy-in, because that made the culture on our school such a positive. And
I think that was because we brought them along on our journey with us.
Yeah.
So every time that we had planned or had a meeting, we shared that out, we got feedback, and we took it back.
Yeah.
So they felt like they were along on that journey.
Yes, I'm hoping I never felt like they felt that we were telling them what we were doing. Yeah. It was a site decision. Everything that we did was a site decision, which is really important for them to feel like it was a site decision that was being made. And
can I build just kind of to talk to you, because I know like Gina and Katie have like, that's such an awesome, right? Like thing that happened where they didn't have anybody opt out at Hidden Valley. My first was at the end, no, the end of my second year, we actually had like 5 people retire. And then we had somewhat of like an influx of like new people. So when we were like redesigning, you know, it was like, okay, we just lost a lot of the veteran people that were all about this movement, wanting to do it. We're really excited. And then it was for us this year, a little bit of recalibrating new people to our site, having them understand the vision and the direction we're headed. And also like a little bit of like, okay, we might have to slow down so we can connect the dots for everybody, because it was like we did a lot of work those first 2 years, but now we've got a chunk of newbies that it's like, okay, we've got to get them to understand the culture and the climate, and kind of like who we are. So I think that's just really powerful in the fact that you guys didn't lose one person to opting out, but also like sometimes you'll also have an influx of people retiring. And I will tell you, I had one person who was new to our site for a year, and just realizing the direction we were headed, actually they did opt out. Because they were just kind of like, well, this isn't really what I like signed up for. And I was like, that's okay. Like if this isn't the direction of the school, you know, that you want to be a part of, it's okay. Let's help get you where you want to be. But I will say that person was like new. They taught for like a year and they were kind of like, uh-oh.
yeah,
So
okay.
yeah, they're like, I don't think
A
so.
lot going on. Yeah.
But I think that's really powerful in just knowing, like, as teachers and site leaders, like sometimes you have to go slow to go fast, and sometimes you have to put your foot on the gas. And I think specifically just being the principal, it's knowing your people, and having a lot of intentional conversations and listening to them, but not just listening, actually acting on what they are saying and what's happening.
Right.
And I think that is really powerful in helping your school continue to move forward.
Yeah, and I think it helped on our design team too, that it was myself, a first grade teacher, Katie, a third grade teacher. We had our intervention teacher and an ASI slash or a resource teacher per se, and a fourth grade teacher. So we had a good balance of every grade span represented, because when we do have conversations, it's very interesting, you know, and I bring this up a lot, how we all look at things different through a different lens, you know, because somebody will say, well, this and that. I go, well, I'm looking at it through first grade teacher's lens. You're looking at it through a fifth grade teacher's lens. So we need to look at it through a lens that we can all see it through, right? Because it's not the same in my classroom as in your fifth grade classroom or fourth grade classroom, right? So we have to look at it how it's going to work for everybody, you know? So I think it helped that we had such a broad, a good mixture of people so that everybody was represented. So it was very balanced when we had our design.
Sorry, it's not like any questions. There were people had a lot of questions, and sometimes
the questions are good, right? Like like you have to allow that space for people to ask those questions, and because there's value in that, and you'll learn a lot about where they're at and where maybe the gaps are in the redesign and the process that you're going through.
Right.
And so there's so much that you can learn through people asking questions, and also like you can then address those issues and concerns.
Right.
And I always tell people like you guys, you have to have an entire group, because everybody does have different perspectives and it affects everyone differently, which in turn in the bigger picture is going to affect our kids differently. So when we're able to have that dialogue and we're able to identify those things and then identify the solutions, it's just going to make everything better and beneficial for our kids when we look at it that way. But I also am big on like conflict isn't a bad thing. Questions aren't a bad thing. That's where the growing happens and the learning occurs, and coming in and supporting everyone at the point that they're at. We have to be willing to reach people wherever they are. And when we do that, we're able to just, like I said, catapult and grow exponentially.
Yes, and I feel like everybody felt represented through their team, right?
Mhm.
And we're supportive. Yeah, we're always supportive. And, like I felt like my kinder and first had me to ask questions through the design team. Everybody had a voice for sure.
Yeah.
So
So many powerful insights here, and I could keep asking questions all day. But yeah, so many wonderful ones. Unfortunately, we're nearing the end of our time here, and so I just wanted to take a moment to give the panelists, one last word. If there's anything that you wanted to say, in closing, just a minute here before we say goodbye. Obviously, much more work to be done, but just kudos to you for one. Recognizing that the time was right to engage in this work, for being vulnerable with yourselves, your staff, your community, and then for taking action and really such powerful change. Any last words?
We saw this question.
we did see one question. Somebody asked what curriculum we're using for hydroponics. We're using Green Our Planet. We got a grant through them, and then is an NGSS approved curriculum for that. And it says hydro versus classroom. Hydro versus classroom. In the classroom. Yes. Yes, hydroponics. And then so if you're gonna redesign, and if you're wondering if it's ever the right time, there's a quote that Katie and I were talking about. It says, "The pool is always cold when you dip your toe in. You just gotta jump and feel how warm it really is." It's never going to be right. You just got to jump in and do it.
Love it.
And I would say there's beauty in the mess.
Yes.
There's beauty in the mess. Messy learning is messy. Change can be hard, but it is worth every minute of it. And when you listen to your teachers, and you bring them alongside and you let them drive the learning, and you bring your students in and they're at the center of everything that you do, it makes everything worthwhile. And I think the biggest part of that too is, even if you don't have a district like we do, right, that has a lot of support behind redesign, you can still affect change at your school site or at the district level. And I just say it's worth it because our kids are worth it.
Yeah,
So.
we're 6 months in, and the change that we see makes my heart, it makes my heart happy.
It's inspiring. Thank you so much. I want to just turn everybody's attention to know that there are more resources if you want to dig in. I know that our team was throwing them into the chat throughout our conversation, but we also have them on our website. And if you want to continue this conversation or learn more, you can obviously use the code on the screen there. But we really value our panelists' time. We value your time. This is such meaningful work. This is challenging work. It's vulnerable work. And you're doing so much by being here and engaging in this conversation. So thank you all for your time, and just have a wonderful day.